What's the difference between augmented reality, virtual reality, and mixed reality? It is a range of experiences. On one hand, we have virtual reality, which is a total immersive experience where you put on a headset and you are disconnected from your environment. Everything you see and interact is a 3D generated object. And on the other hand, for augmented reality, you have a connection to your environment, like in HoloLens, and you have some extra information, maybe 3D or maybe audio information that's available to you, which is augmenting your reality. Also, we have mobile phone applications like Pokemon Go. You are looking through the glass of your phone and you're able to find 3D objects in the real world. And this whole range of experiences we call mixed reality. And short, it's called XR.
So, hi everyone. Today, the last session of today in Channel 1. And this session is presented by Ven and Supun. Welcome, guys. So, how are you today?
Very well, thanks, Alex. How are you?
Good, good. Can you tell me a bit about Imersian? You're both founders of the organization.
Yes, so Immersion is essentially a 3D and AR infrastructure for the web. So we're trying to build a platform to simplify access to 3D and AR services on the web, and primarily building a means for people to easily create and facilitate the metaverse that's coming in a very short time.
That is cool. Yeah, and indeed, metaverse has become something really incredible if you think about in the last few weeks with the large companies starting with that. So with further ado, I'm going to give you the stage. So can you share your deck?
Yep, so Supun, once you're ready,
yep, I'm done.
Okay, I will get back to you after the presentation. So good luck, guys.
Thanks, Alex. So thanks for joining us today from all parts of the globe. It's quite early in the morning in Australia, where we are currently based. So journey to augmenting your world. So we're basically going to just go through some ups and downs and pretty much everything in between that's involved in being founders of a 3D and AR startup. Especially down in Australia. And we'll probably first go through a bit of our backgrounds, then cover a bit about Imersian, how it started, and our offerings. And then we'll give a bit of background on why we're really bullish on WebXR and why we're hedging our bets on it versus other technologies, and what lies in the road ahead for us. So I'll start off with my background, I guess, a bit of a story. I come from an architecture background, so studied architecture throughout my life. Now I'm basically reconsidering architecture. I'm still a very keen designer, but have been influenced quite a bit by VR and AR throughout my architectural course earlier mid 2010s. So these are the three key projects that you can see on the page, which have been quite influential in me being, okay, well, virtual reality and augmented reality is something that I really do want to be involved in. So the first project is called the Virtual Space Theory. It's a paper written by Or Ettlinger, where he proposes or presents this this painting by Bruegel. Apologies if I'm spelling it wrong. but Bruegel, who's created this painting called the Tower of Babel, which consists of a beautiful painting of a tower. Now, in the paper, Orr Ettlinger questions where exactly is the tower and asks the readers whether it's in the picture, is it in our heads, is it in the imagination, is it in Bruegel's imagination, is it in our imagination, or is it in Babel? And through this, he speculates quite a few things, goes in deep detail about breaking things down, about the mental consciousness and how we experience the world, and proposes that it's actually in virtual space. Speaking of devices of illusions being a work of art and a physical arrangement of physical matter in physical space that allows the experience of a virtual space located in the virtual space. So it's quite profound how he interacts with it, and essentially talks about each painting potentially being its own virtual space and being able to experience them as separate individual spaces with its own life, its own character, its own set of amusings. So the next project that I was quite heavily involved in, this was one of the early days of the HoloLens, the first iteration of it. And I was first exposed to this as a proof of concept that we were developing for a company now called Hologram, who are leveraging the HoloLens for rapid construction for intricate formwork in AEC, or the architecture, engineering, and construction industry, to remove the need for drawings, essentially. So what you're currently seeing here is me projecting a hologram through the HoloLens of a quite complex piece of wall, if you will, with undulating forms, and being able to just stack these bricks really quickly using the HoloLens and being able to construct something that was previously just on the computer in the virtual space was quite a fascinating topic for me, as it actually provided an actual solution to some of the challenges faced in the construction industry, like really slow pace of constructing something like this and requirements of drawings. And that whole process pretty much just took us 3 hours to do. So that was my first exposure to how can AR and MR potentially solve real world challenges rather than just being this amusing tools that are more for entertainment. And finally, the third project that was quite influential. Again, I came across this during my thesis project for architecture. It's called the Palimpsest. Again, an incredible project and very ambitious, where the main idea was to capture the space that you're currently in and you're experiencing, for example, this conference, and capturing them in point clouds and capturing the animated version of it, like me speaking, overlaying the voice, everything captured. And the idea was to capture moments in history and being able to overlay that information in your existing environment through an augmented reality headset, potentially. And being able to visit a time in history and be able to really understand the culture and the human society that functioned back then. So these are some really profound impacts that AR and VR can have, and we're incredibly, well, I was really, really excited about these technologies. So these were the 3 key projects that drove my ambition towards AR. Now I might just hand it over to Supun so he can introduce himself.
Thanks, Ven. Hi, everyone around the world, and good morning from Australia. My interest in 3D and AR began in 2018. It was mainly influenced by one of my personal experiences. In 2018, I built a new house and moved to a new house. As you can see this image, this is my house without any flooring, without any furniture or decorators or lighting. So at that time, selecting those items, very time-consuming task. Go through different websites and imagine whether those items would fit into my house design and house color theme, and also unsure about the sizes and arrangement of this furniture. At that time, I understand there's a new technology called augmented reality, and also found the well-known furniture giant IKEA created first augmented reality app called IKEA Place app. I tried it by placing items in my home. It was fine. It was, at that time, it was fantastic, but it had limitation. And indeed, IKEA was one of the early or the first movers from furniture retailers who tried to add augmented reality to their customers' purchasing journey. It was a cool idea and trying to solve a big problem customers like I, who struggling to visualize and design my own spaces. Even though it's a great app, there are a few limitations in app-based augmented reality. The main problem is, what if every retailer created an augmented reality mobile app? Then as a user, I had to download multiple apps from different retailers, and that will be a friction point accessing augmented reality as a user. I have to download many apps just for one of use case, that is when purchasing furniture. And we don't buy furniture as frequently as clothes, so it's not the perfect solution in my opinion. And from the retailer's perspective, they want to build an app that might not be useful if they don't have large product catalog as IKEA. At that time, my thought process went through something like this. What if we have something like this? It works directly from browser, can place multiple items in my space, and it allows me to design my house as I want. And I can interact with these objects, place them, and redesign, rearrange, and change the colors and texture of it. Then I started, these concerns motivated me to develop an web-based solution. And I started studying technologies like ARCore, ARKit, WebXR. And after failing a few attempts, mid this year, we managed to develop our AI space designer that allows people to place multiple items directly from website. Here you can see from our website, as a user, I can place multiple items directly to my house and interact with them, rearrange them, and reorganize as I want. I can change the coffee table and chair and artificial plant, place them in different places, and see how the design looks like. I think this allows me to make firm purchasing decisions, especially when it comes to furniture shopping. On the other hand, as a retailer, they can increase or boost sales conversion because their customers know which product they need to buy with more confidence. And we designed this application pure web-based with concept of easy integration. So simple JavaScript integration is required to add this to a website.
So where did this all start? And how did Imersian actually get to form? It's an interesting conversation actually, because Supun and I met basically earlier this year in Antler, who are a global VC, and we like out of like 80 or so of a cohort, it was like, okay, who here is interested in 3D and AR? And we were basically just trying to uh, like we almost essentially found each other. Like it was like the perfect co-founder marriage, if you will. And basically, Supun has been, as he said, working on this since 2018 as a proof of concept technology. And now, when he actually proposed this to me, I was like, okay, that is actually a really fascinating idea. Let's do something with it. And Supun, if you can just play that video. This was one of our first proof of concepts that we'd actually built, which is quite a straightforward implementation. Back then, even though it's less than a year ago, back then it was quite novel. And where you can basically use a laptop, you've got your different websites where you can view your 3D assets on and be able to quickly scan a QR code and place it in your space using a mobile phone. And that was an interesting technology. But we've been looking at it like for the past few months, especially with the new announcements by the big tech giants as well, is the space is rapidly growing and there's a massive hype around it right now. So if you can just switch over to the next slide, Supun. We basically approach Crossed with this proof of concept, and who are our first clients, who are a premier commercial furniture supplier down here in Australia. And the second we actually presented our product, they were like, we've actually come across like 6 to 7 different augmented reality platforms, and we haven't seen anything that's that simple to use, and they signed on with us. Well, it was time to celebrate. Like we were like, okay, we've got some fascinating things or a fascinating technology that we're building that a customer potentially likes. And remember that there was a proof of concept. We didn't have an MVP. We didn't have an actual product yet. It was purely everything done in the manually in the back end. So we got around to starting to build this entire tech stack going forward. And basically, as I said, we are in a time where it's moving super rapidly, and we were like, okay, how do you make it even more appealing for the masses? Sure, placing individual products is great, but the true essence of actually using such a tool is to being able to place multiple products, being able to compare and really select and design your own space with all the different furniture pieces from various retailers. And we were like, okay, how can we actually do it? Like the technology, there's no current technology that exists. Let's try and build it. And we noticed that no one's doing it. And eventually, going forward, we were like, okay, let's patent it. And for the past few months, actually, our patent process is ridiculously slow and painstaking. There's a constant back and forth between your lawyers and attorneys who are trying to patent it or build up a case for building a patent application. And it was quite time consuming, especially because we couldn't actually share this technology with anyone else, because due to patent processes and the IP protection of IP around it, it does limit your conversations with potential clients to talk about this technology, and you really have to wait until it's initially launched. So we finally got our patent, and now we're currently in the process of mass marketing and acquiring some customers, which takes us on to a couple of interesting questions that we've been asked quite a few times. Why WebXR? Why aren't you looking at VR? Why aren't you looking at all the other technologies or mixed realities? For that, I just want to refer back or use this as a foundation. This is called the reality virtuality continuum, which is a continuous scale which ranges from between the completely virtual that you can see on the right-hand side, which is a virtuality, and the completely real on the left-hand side, which is called the reality. So the virtual reality continuum essentially was proposed by Paul Milgram and his associates back in 1994, that essentially encompasses all the possible variations and compositions of the real and the virtual objects. So within the scale, you can place augmented reality on your phones. You can place your XR devices like the HoloLens. You can place the virtual reality headsets as well. And a couple of key things that this led us to is hardware dependence. The furthermore, if you can just switch over to the next slide, the furthermore you go down the virtual environment, the hardware dependence and technology that needs to evolve exponentially increases, and you require a massive amount of investment in terms of building up that sort of technology or hardware. Beyond this, like why do AR and not VR? There's obviously a massive debate around this AR or VR, which one is going to get the upper hand for the metaverse. Like I've been following, obviously, everyone in the space would be following the larger tech giants, and Tim Cook had an interesting speculation or a perspective on this, where he believes that AR is probably a lot more interesting and has a larger chance of impacting your real world and real world solutions, or providing real world solutions to real world problems. So that was an interesting one. The VR hangover is quite an interesting topic as well. This was initially, I came across this in a paper by Tom Metzinger, and he suggested the possibility of depersonalization and derealization. And I've experienced this firsthand when using a VR headset for like a couple of hours playing a game a couple of years ago, where as soon as you remove your headset, you just feel the sensation of unreality, and it's really hard for your mind to comprehend and reorient itself back into the real world. And like these are definitely some causes of concern, and there's still some studies that still needs to be done in terms of understanding the human psyche and how it actually functions, and how can you switch seamlessly between VR and AR, or VR and the real world. Beyond this, another really interesting point that was highlighted, especially I came across this recent article called The Dark Arts of, or the Dark Realm of Virtual Reality, where again, it was a paper referencing to Thomas Metzinger, where there's potential for behavior manipulation in the VR space. We're already being, to an extent, controversially, being manipulated through our mobile phones, through the apps that we're constantly looking at, getting really high amounts of feed about what to think, what to do, what the political alignments, and you're really targeted in terms of those advertisements, which have been summarized very well by various sources and Netflix documentaries as well. And the chances of this happening even further in a VR space, especially if it is controlled, or that metaverse is controlled by organizations and governments, is really it's quite scary. And these are definitely potential causes of concern, because you're really deeply embedded into virtual space versus with a phone, for example, where you're just holding it in your hand and you can just chuck it away. But we're not saying that VR as a technology is not a good technology. What we're trying to say is that these things require some time to understand and be able to understand as a society and a group, and be able to influence how these technologies are used ethically. And I would definitely recommend to everyone to read these papers. I have some sources down below, but I'm happy to add that into some chat box or descriptions as well. Beyond this, like, where are we seeing things headed? Well, we're looking at a more app-free and an open future. We currently in a strange phase where we're almost at a progressive web app space, where many of the native apps, like for example Twitter, is like transitioning away from native apps to progressive web apps that can be served across different devices and different like cross-platform and pollination across different devices. And we just see that being accelerated as we move towards a Web3 adoption, which is essentially a more decentralized internet, as a very basic explanation of it, which again has its own topic. I can talk all about it in another talk. But yeah, going forward, I might just hand this over back to Supun to expand on some of the hardware and how he sees the future of WebXR.
Thanks, Ven. As you can see in this picture, about once a decade or so, a new technology and a medium come into our life, and it changed the way we communicate and interact with each other. As a kid growing up in 90s, I remember first computer I used. Then we use laptops, internet, we have smartphones and cloud computing. And now I believe we are at the edge of another technological revolution. And we believe that could be augmented reality. The main reason why I believe augmented reality is it nicely blends digital world into real world. And we can experience the digital world without leaving our real environment. As we all know, the big tech companies like Apple and Meta are developing next generation augmented reality glasses. Imaging, I'm wearing one of those glasses, and I will not need to hold a screen anymore because my glass will project all the information in front of my space, and I can consume data anytime I want. And everything will be blended into my environment. Furthermore, I have full control what information and when I want to consume those information. And this, I believe, would provide a nice segue to the virtual reality without facing the problems when explained previously. At Imersian, we develop our core technology with WebXR first approach. I like WebXR API mainly as a developer. I can develop one application that will run across multiple devices. It can be HoloLens, it can be Oculus, or mobile browsers. And WebXR API is rapidly evolving. I think once most of the devices and browsers implemented these WebXR API, we can do many powerful things. And as a developer, I can build once and deploy to many devices. I don't want to worry about cross devices or cross platform issues. That's why I believe WebXR has huge potential at the moment. And even now, we can see we have more than 3.5 billion mobile devices. And think about once Apple implemented WebXR API to iOS and Safari web browser, then these users will have access to WebXR. And as a developer, we can develop nice application. And in contrast to mobile phones availability for AR, HoloLens and virtual reality headset has a limited number. Obviously, these numbers will grow in coming years due to the metaverse and those concepts. And there is another reason why we believe WebAR and WebXR will be the future. Especially the 5G technology will provide faster internet and higher bandwidth, and data transferring would be easier, and that will provide much better user experience. So without any lagging or data transferring issues, users can experience nice WebXR scenes. And we believe, due to these reasons, we believe augmented reality metaverse will be there in near future. And we have developed a few applications for, using our WebXR technology. I'll hand over to Ven to go through some of the projects we have done and showcase them.
Thanks, Supun. So these are just a few demonstrations or videos or images of our technology. Like, we built a space designer, patent pending tech. Now, there's quite a few use cases beyond just being able to visualize furniture in your space. You can potentially use it for assemblies and be able to really understand how potentially an IKEA furniture piece could come together in your house, and just give you a guided explanation of how it exactly works. There's a lot of questions around real estate and how can we potentially use it for virtual staging. We've been in conversations with a few real estate agents as well, talking about what if we use this product as a virtual staging option, where you take your iPhone or your phone, go into your space, and since it's an empty space, you can just create some pre-configured packages that you would like to use in the house, place them, take some beautiful photos, and directly publish them onto your online portals where you sell your houses. The existing ways of doing virtual staging is quite cumbersome in the sense that you first have to hire a professional photographer. They have to go into the space. It's an empty room. They take photos of the empty room, go back into the studio, potentially hire or have some of their colleagues working on some photoshopping where they take snippets. They have to find the right angles, furniture pieces or 2D images of the furniture pieces, place it on Photoshop, make sure it blends in well, the lighting works properly, etc. So it is a very long and time-consuming process. On the other hand, real-world staging is also quite cumbersome, where you have to bring in real furniture assets or furniture into your space, place it, and that in itself is quite a costly and time-consuming task for real estate agents who are trying to flip a house as quickly as they can. So we see a lot of potential in real estate. Beyond that, we're also quite fascinated with WebXR in education. Supun might play a video soon which demonstrates an animated dino park where he used it to explain to his kids on how dinosaurs potentially existed. And we've always come across, at least I've always come across dinosaurs as a kid on an image where you have this little tiny human as a 2D avatar and a massive dinosaur right next to it as a drawing. And just to try and give us an understanding of what the scale is. But imagine looking at something like this and being like, okay, that actually gives me a better understanding and an engaging way of learning about something or concepts, learning about concepts that I'm not very aware of. So there's definitely a lot of scope in many industries to apply some of the technology that we are building. And think that may have answered a couple of questions that I just saw pop up in the chat a while ago. We do support animations. We do VR based on the cloud. It's a cloud platform. And basically, if you're going to switch over to the next slide, we are running a workshop tomorrow around the same time on mastering the Imersian platform. So anyone joining in will get like 3 months of free access to our pro features where they can use the Space Designer as well. There's a little QR code right on the side which you can scan and try the Space Designer yourself. And I would love some feedback. As you know, we are still a startup, and we are driven by customer feedback and like user feedback especially. But that said, 7:30 p.m. tomorrow, UTC. There's a link. I'm sure Alex will help point you guys to the event link as well. But thank you for your time, and I'll open this up to any questions you have. I think you're muted, Alex.
That normally happens only when I'm doing Teams meetings. I'm doing many of those. Great, guys. I love the session. Really interesting. We actually got a number of questions. I even wrote my own questions down, so I'm going to do a bit of a mixture of both. So one of the questions was, I like that one because for a lot of people, it's always difficult how to understand how to start within XR. And often it's said you need to know a lot. So Ahmed is asking how can I contribute to either VR or AR to my studies? So he has an MSc and he wants to study a PhD related to those fields. But what he doesn't want to do is too much a theoretical thing, which I can understand. What would be your suggestion in this case? And that means for all the people who actually wants to move in this kind of space.
And I'll let Supun answer this because it might be because he's got the technical background, but I might chime in after.
Yeah, sure. So, yeah, WebXR is rapidly changing specification, but now it's getting matured and stable. So the best thing is, first of all, understand the concept around it. So the best way is going through some examples provided by WebXR website. You can Google, and I can put some links later. That's the first thing. And other thing is we need to find a use case which can be applicable for XR. Obviously, as we explained, there are many use cases, but if you pick up one use case and that can be your starting point. For example, we started with interior designing because I had that pain point. Then I wanted to solve it. And if you have some pain point, maybe that's the good way to start. Or maybe fine-tune someone or something has done using mobile app, and that can be turned into WebXR. It's not easy, to be honest. I spent a lot of years studying and trying to understand those concepts. But definitely, a lot of example will be available, and we will be providing some example as well in future. So it's going to be a collaborative journey for the WebXR.
And Ven, you want to add something?
Yes, just related to that PhD topic potentially. Like if you were keen to do some PhD, I've been considering doing a PhD on like I'm a polyglot. I love everything tech, but with PhDs, the way I've looked at potentially doing it is finding some fascinating research projects that you find really fascinating, seeing who potentially the author is. They usually tend to be PhD graduates or even professors. Find some like-minded people, just reach out to them, find them on LinkedIn, reach out to them and message them saying, hey, I'm really interested in this. What are your thoughts on potentially building something on this, and they'll give you some insights into what their PhD students might be working on, and if there's some alignment between you and that university's idea, and just reach out to like 10 or 15 of them. There's tons of people to reach out to for it.
Yeah, I agree. I think the community around XR is one of the most welcome feeling communities in the world. And indeed, what Supun said, building something, just start building something which really helps you to learn how the technology works. But yeah, it can take many years to get really good at it, as I know myself. It's a lot of work. So there was some questions about models. So the same from Ahmed is it stored in a cloud, the models? And the second question, I think it's a combination of Chris Watts asked if you can import any kind of model. So can we do GLTF and FBX with animations as well? Or do we need to stay with standard OBG models?
I can answer first. So we support currently FBX, OBJ, and our platform can convert automatically to GLTF, GLB, and USDZ. And for the WebXR, we mainly using GLTF and GLB. I think that answered the question. And we have some optimization, for example, geometric compression algorithms in place as well.
Yeah. The question I had. Yeah. Oh, sorry, go on.
Yeah, I think Supun, you might have. Sorry, Supun, you might have missed it, but we do also support directly importing GLTF files as well. So it's not necessarily that you need to convert, or like bring in FBX and we do the conversion.
Yeah, certainly.
The question I had it's actually a bit about the 3D models. I like the way of how you put it into the room. I noticed that it already takes into occlusion. So if there's some shades going on the floor, for me, it was not entirely clear if you also do something with lighting. I saw lighting on the objects, but is it virtual lighting or is it the actual lighting of the environment?
Yeah, so WebXR recently introduced environment lighting estimate. So not all devices supporting, unfortunately, but it will be there eventually. So what you saw was iOS WebAR. It's not really WebXR because iOS is not supporting WebXR yet, but we have some technology implementation to make it happen for iOS. And behind the scene, it use ARKit, and ARKit has lighting estimate. What you saw is actual lighting estimate from ARKit.
Okay. Yeah, because it was very hard to see if it was the virtual lighting of the actual lighting. But yeah, that's actually good. So what other kind of questions? Yeah, from Irfan. Is there any market of revenue generating opportunity for smartphones-based VR and AR headsets, mainly in India and Asia? So I know I'm right if he's from India, if I'm right. And one of the things is that he also said Oculus is actually not available officially in India. So the market is more focused on mobile devices, which I presume.
Well, we don't have an extensive amount of expertise in the Asian markets, but just from my heritage background from India, I'm aware that there's I think India is one of the largest, you have one of the most amount of Android users, and everyone almost has a phone there, which is an incredible feat of its own.
Yeah.
In terms of validating that idea of whether VR has some market, I would probably just recommend talking to some of the users, because culturally it's very different. Technology is not as adopted in India as a primary problem-solving driver as compared to some of the other nations. So I would probably say this is an amazing ripe space in India where you have users who are not sure what VR even is. Tap into them, maybe get a headset, give it to your friends, give it to your families. Tell them, what do you think of this? Do you think it's something beyond entertainment? What do you think it can solve? And that's probably the best way to potentially build a startup around, like finding real world problems and solving them.
I agree completely with that because we spoke with each other just before the session, and I told you how I started with XR. For me, it was HoloLens. And one of the biggest challenges was that lots of people said, it's a gadget. It's not going to work. You can only play a game with that. And if you see now, after 5-6 years, how far we are, and it's actually ruling the world, we are talking about metaverse. There's a company called Facebook who changed the name to Meta. It just goes wild. It's incredible. With regards to VR, so one of the remarks was, and I actually agree with that, you said there was about 6.1 million on headset VR devices. I think it's also very low. Chris Watt said something about it because it's about 10 million times the 6.1. I know that, for example, the company I work for, they actually use internally more than 60,000 devices. They made it public a few weeks ago. So but if you look at, I'm really fond of MR and AR. I mean, that's my focus area. I'm less focused on VR. But I have to be honest, if you look at VR nowadays, VR starts to become moving in the same direction. The fact that you have video pass through in the cameras, and there are even devices like the Link XR1, who is now able to do MR and VR both. And you have just one platform which can build for both. And devices becomes less expensive. And let's be honest, using a VR device is even cheaper than buying a mobile phone nowadays. I'm just wondering, at some point, because I don't want to put the whole debate on this one, it's always a bit tricky. But yeah, I can imagine that maybe your future also will lie in that direction while you still focus on the mobile devices.
For sure. I think we may have come across, like, there might have been some like the way we potentially portrayed ourselves. Like, we're not against VR as a technology.
No.
As I said, we still think that it is definitely a very powerful tool in its own right. But I just feel like we're not ready for it yet as a society, but also as an industry. Like, many people you speak to, I come from, as I said, an architecture background. I had one of the workplaces, like, where I was working just earlier this year. I was really pushing to buy some headsets, and we wanted a 3D printer. We wanted a headset. I've been trying to push for buying a robot for fabricating and stuff. As I said, I'm a polyglot, and no one is ready to invest in that. Enterprises don't want to, because they're like, why should I invest in a technology which is going to become redundant in 2 years? I'm not going to pay $10,000 for a headset, and then eventually, in like less than 2 years, there'll be new models that's coming out, which will be a lot more cheaper. And like, people in the space, the AR, VR, who are actually building, they are incredibly bullish, or really like, we all can see that potential it has, but people outside of the space don't yet. And you have to serve them first, because educating them about AR is a lot more easier, because it's still you grounded in like in your real space, augmenting your world. Whereas VR is still seen as this gaming gadget that people can play games on. So that's just our 2 cents on this topic.
Yeah, I agree on that partly also, because we see that from an enterprise level the same. AR mixed reality makes it far more easier to get things onto people, because it will keep them into the real life world. But I'm curious what's going to happen with VR in the future at that point. So more questions. The one thing I want to mention to the people is that indeed you guys have a workshop tomorrow. Now, you showed an Eventbrite link. That one is already closed. But what I'm going to do is, that will be done. I think I can do that even tonight after this session, is within your dedicated Discord channel, which is the SB418. I will add a link to the Teams meeting so that people can join tomorrow in that Teams meeting together. So, and I will keep that in there so people can still join. The Teams session will be recorded. It's not directly visible on YouTube, but after the workshop is finished, we put it later that day on YouTube so people can still watch it later if they want to.
Perfect. Just a final thought about the workshop. I don't think we've explained the entire platform that we're offering, which is we offer 3D creation, hosting those 3D assets, and being able to integrate and publish them on your websites or different channels, but also analytics around how those 3D assets are used. But just giving you this really quick overview, in case you do have any questions, like some particular questions about, okay, I want to do this, like maybe I want to export GLTF from Blender or from Rhino or from some of the 3D software, feel free to just post any requests like that on the Discord channel, and we'll try and cover them for tomorrow's session.
Yes, and to make it clear, I said actually SB418, but it is WF419, which is the workshop. I will make sure that the link will be in that one. So that's easy to find. Just look on Discord channel. Both, thank you for the session, and I wish you a very good day today, and I will see you tomorrow at the workshop. So thank you, Ven. Thank you, Supun.
Thanks, Alex.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.